Part 2, Chapter 12, Reconciliation. An opaque black kept me in a dreary state, tender, whirring existence, a state of being I clung to each and every day, an achievable, comforting peace that never failed to seduce additional minutes from my morning. In the past, the strong scent of black coffee brewing downstairs tempted rebirth, knowing when he left I'd be able to sneak half a cup and catch a morning cartoon. I turned in place, sharply taking in air through my nose, but not quite ready to submit to the will of today. The song of a dream was carried by invisible winds, colorful and pleasant, personal. Abstract shapes with no affiliation coddled and secured my mind, while my body was equally cared for by my blanket. A yawn, and my left eye unstuck briefly, long enough to see an unnatural white light reflecting off my ceiling. My eyes shut again, the dream skittering out of reach, fearful. My face scrunched, and I registered something I wish I hadn't. Opening both eyes, bleary and dry, I saw nothing unexpected. Confused, contradicted, my hands flexed, and a shiver coated me. Rolling over to face my window, I stared with a loose expression at the old frame. My backpack was between my bed and the window, dumped onto the floor and lacking some details, like an artist's sketch partially erased and forgotten. Another yawn forced my eyes to shut, and when they reopened, my bag was gone. I shook my head, convinced my dreariness inspired another hallucination. Smacking my lips, I relished the heat that tickled every hair. I pulled the blanket up to my neck and coddled closer to my pillow, groggy and swimming in such a wonderful bliss. I couldn't get enough of the heat. For some reason, I felt like I had been freezing all night long. A ringing in my ears was ever present, resting in a pocket behind my eyes. I listened for the usual noises: birds, chipmunks, the television, maybe a struggling water heater. But there was nothing notable. More than that, there was a distinct lack of noise at all. My breathing was almost muted. My heartbeat was silent, and there was no wind. All I could perceive was a low rumbling coming from outside, like a jet passing overhead with its volume turned down to 1%. Starting to feel uneasy, I rolled onto my back and rubbed my eyes. Then I rolled to my right and saw the lamp on my nightstand was on. I swallowed, trying to remember what nightmare or vague threat kept me from sleeping last night. I turned it off and instantly heard a cracking noise. Startled, I looked down past my feet and saw the mirror on my closet door now had a huge crack down the middle. I sat up and took a deep breath, locked onto the mirror. Fingerprints and stickers decorated the glass. My breathing shallowed, and I sank a little deeper into the mattress. I scowled, wondering why I was staring at the mirror. Did I forget something? I got out of bed and stumbled to the closet. Glaring at my reflection, I searched for anything out of the ordinary. I touched the glass, gliding 4 fingers across my face and then returning my hand to my side. There was nothing wrong with it. I turned back to face my bedroom. Everything felt slanted, even though visually there was nothing to note. I stood here with no urge to speak or dictate in my mind, but as I idled, I experienced something odd, like where I was right now overlapped with 100 ghosts of myself. Every motion I made since waking, replayed as a figment, over and over until countless invisible versions of myself caught up to where I was now and settled. My head wobbled as I tried to shake it off. It's just another weird thing that happens here. This house is, and always has been, bizarre. I peered at my clock. The time flashed 12. The power must have flickered at some point. A blinding light from the window cast a long shadow over the door and warmed my back as it bounced off my rug. I sighed and started toward my door. The moment I touched the bronze knob, a stabbing jolt crushed my mind and hunched me forward. A vivid flashback of my head colliding with the knob as a child invaded me, and then all at once released my body. I gasped, taking in air while still holding the knob. A sweltering lump formed on the back of my head. I reached up and gingerly touched it, feeling the sting. Confused, I turned around with my hand still on the knob and stared at my room. The light from my window was nearly blinding. I couldn't see the trees or even the edges of the frame, just yellow and white burning light. With this intense ray, I saw the deep shadows cast by the bed. A shape caught my attention. I bent down slightly, squinting at the deep shadow under my bed frame, and what I saw twisted my stomach. It was me, a transparent, flickering version of me, cowering beneath the mattress with horror painted on her face and glowing blue eyes. She flinched at nothing, flickered in and out of existence, and seemingly had no color to her body aside from her eyes. She then turned to a fragile smoke and sank into the floor. My heart was trembling, fingertips going numb. I attempted to speak, but nothing came out. I painted words in my mind, but my inner lexicon was lacking structure. Turning back to the door, I prepared myself for more peculiarities. It opened with ease, and in the same motion, the light outside my window lowered, leaving the entire upstairs shrouded in darkness. But that same light seemed to have rotated around my house and poured in through the lower windows, like a flashlight rotating around a dollhouse. I could see just past the railing that the downstairs was lit up like it was the middle of the day. I paused, feeling angst build in my chest. Then I heard a light ceramic bump. Curious, I advanced a few steps and placed both hands on top of the railing. My heart nearly shriveled, and I choked on air. My dad was sitting on the couch, fully dressed and sipping coffee with a newspaper in hand. Another vibration slithered over my neck and forced me to turn. Looking down the dark hallway toward the bathroom, I watched a pale figure with no discernible features stroll proudly toward me. One hand raised and their fingers dragging over the wall. A metallic hum gripped my teeth and caused me to sway slightly. They blinked in and out of my view until they reached where I stood and entered my bedroom, but the room remained vacant. They were gone. I swallowed the lump in my throat and slowly turned back to see him take a sip of coffee. A trembling smile crept onto my face, and I casually moved down the stairs. Every step was heavier than the last, like I was moving deeper into a pond of dirty water. My lungs hurt, my feet were cold, but I pushed on. I rounded the corner and stood under the railing. Again, I was met by a blinding white light coming from the windows on his left. That's when he noticed me. Setting his cup on the table with a careful thud, he gave me an unsure glance before smirking and setting the paper aside. He looked at me for a few pondering moments, knees straight and elbows resting on top. He appeared just the same as ever, except he was cleaner. His scruffy facial hair was neatly kempt, and the mess on top of his head was combed and trimmed down. He wore a blue long-sleeved shirt and jeans that distinctly lacked holes or stains. He was smiling, but maintained hesitant eyes. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. Then his lips pressed, and a complex expression morphed his face before raising his chin and exhaling softly. He attempted to speak again, pitching his voice to be content. "You're here." I felt razor blades in my throat, burning blood pooling, blocking words. It was painful, but I had to swallow. I had to dig them out. A step closer shifted something inside. "Dad, is that really you?" He smirked. "It's me." I took another step forward and stopped, conflicting reactions clashing inside. Part of me was threatened by his smirk. The other was elated to hear his voice. A wheezing inhale stifled my body, and a trembling exhale left me feeling misaligned. I looked around. "This isn't real, is it?" He directed his eyes around, then centered back on me. "That depends on what you mean by real. What exists out there is the real you know. This is just as genuine. maybe even more so. It all depends on you. My expression tensed. I'm confused. I winced, a jolt in my brain. Why can't I remember yesterday? Which one? He chuckled. What? I grit my teeth. He gave me a skeptical glance, then sipped his coffee again. Ah, I see. There's too many obstacles. My hand flinched, and I felt a wave of something pulse out from my skin. A distorted slap sound pitched my ears and spiked adrenaline in me for a moment. What the fuck are you talking about? My voice hit the walls, sharp, and knocked the phone loose from its mount. It hit the floor, and the dial tone hummed at a low volume. I glared at it, feeling a rage behind my eyes. With my stare, the phone went silent. I looked back at him, and he set the cup down in the newspaper with a sigh. You're still so angry, he said, disappointed. I retracted that anger, reverting to a cloudy sadness. Looking to the floor, I pouted. What's going on? You don't talk like my dad. This place isn't my home. I can't think. He cleared his throat. I'm not your dad. Not completely. He looked nervously at me, and I recentered my gaze. I'm what you took. I stared in disbelief. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw more partial images move about the room. These pieces expressed our shapes and moved around the house, mimicking our daily rituals. I saw myself lag from the sink to the door and back to the couch without moving any space between. I saw other copies of his body blink around at random, idle for extended periods at 10 times the speed, then continue. Some things became clear to me. Random minutes before now, a broken timeline. You're his essence, I confirmed. He nodded, then he straightened his back, smiling at me. I'm him, I know you, I know us. It's hard to explain. I sniffled, emotion welling. I think I understand. My feet inched closer together, and I took my elbow in my hand, feeling childish and scared. Somber air twisted around us. I averted my eyes again, trying to pry loose some semblance of before, but all I could remember was waking up just moments ago. I think. Hey, he ushered softly, breaking the silent hold in my mind. Can you come here? I want to talk to you. My lips separated, and my teeth remained locked. Above me, behind the railing, I could sense shadows moving about. Light thumps and scrapes attempted to distract. I saw him dart his eyes above me, scowl, and then look back at me with softer features. He moved over slightly, allowing me a generous amount of space at his side. I know my dad. He was never this inviting, this sensitive. A cold ball of wire in my belly slowed my movements, but I did carefully move to the couch and take a seat beside him. There was about a foot of space between us. He didn't attempt to close the gap. His hands wrapped around each other, closing his one balled fist between his legs. Insecure. Something I've never seen from him. He spoke softly. He cleared his throat again. I know this is weird and difficult. You must feel so lost and, I don't know, scared. I'm not scared, I said unconvincingly. He frowned. Because you're not remembering. Not here. Dad, what is here? I pressed. He tapped his foot on the floor. You've been here before. A couple of times now. Usually, you drop in and take something as fuel. I tried to talk, but this is the first time you didn't. His words trailed off. Didn't what? He smirked at me, pressing his foot flat. Make me a puppet and kill me. I blinked, mouth agape. he continued. The replays manifest you here, piece by piece until you're completed, and then you do what you do and move along. You get what you need. My head shook. You're not making any sense. Of course I am. He absorbed my look, shifted his jaw, then reached for something. I inched closer, and he paused, glancing at me from the corner of his eye, not hostile. He then leaned back and held out the television remote in his hand. This piece might hurt. Just remember, pain helps us grow. I blinked. You used to say that all the time. Fickle trust inspired my hand to move, taking the remote from him and orienting it in my grip. Not for a long while now. He grinned. I licked my lips, raising my head and facing the television. Its black screen didn't reflect our image on the couch, just a void. Nothing somehow deeper than the glass. I lifted the remote, took a deep breath, and pressed the power button. At first, I felt nothing more than a small push of air. It seeped out from my pores, tickling the hairs on my body. I grimaced as creeping nausea infected me and crippled my organs. I doubled over, gripping my stomach and experiencing a violent flash of hissing voices. Overlapping, almost visual, they bombarded me without a second to breathe. Everything, all at once. My dad and his death, the nights to follow, the care I'd been given by Tansu and her mom, my recent return. Then, the playground. Electrified, the remote was sent away from my hand. It skipped across the coffee table and landed on the floor beneath the balcony. I groaned, fingers curling and rigid. All of who I was since the moment I left this house for the final time came crashing into me like an avalanche of loathing vitriol. I recoiled in my seat, hitting my head against the back of the couch and sinking slightly. He put his hand out and touched my shoulder, gently holding me in place while I settled. My entire body was limp for a minute or two, maybe an hour, however time works here. Regardless, after a short time, my breathing escalated and I collected myself, sitting upright and darting my eyes frantically all around. My tongue pressed against the roof of my mouth as I held back pained gasps. He patted my shoulder and retracted his arm. There we go. Better? My throat was tight. Better? No, not at all. He laughed, but not at me. My breathing slowed, and I smirked as well. He said, Now we can get somewhere. I promise I'll listen this time. It still took me some time to recover, all the memories swelling, clawing for dominance over my emotions. I continued to see those ghastly images of previous events just dance in the background, silent and sickening, some more mundane but no less haunting. I exhaled, almost calm again. Now I was who I knew myself to be, mostly. I spoke. I still don't know how I got here. I'm not interested in that. I want to know how things have been. Do you mean like school and whatnot? His shoulders bounced a little. Sure, if that's what's on your mind. I don't know. I mean, it took me a while, but I finally went back. Turned out to be a horrible idea because, well, let's just say I don't think I'll ever be able to go back again. He nodded along. That explains your recent ventures here. I take it that demon got loose. Shame constricted my throat, bringing me down the emotional rungs. I almost made it. If I had just walked away, accepted her apology, then no one would have gotten hurt. Try not to blame yourself, Kim. Those demons are a real nasty breed. They take advantage of you, twist you into what they need to thrive. I paused, thinking. I won't lie. The scariest part about it is that it feels good being strong. Knowing people can't hurt me. With Alice, I'm not weak anymore. It's addicting. He inhaled sharply. You were never weak. You had so much against you all your life, and you couldn't do anything about it. You and I were just pawns in his game. But don't think for a second that I didn't see your unique light. You're special, Kim. Special? No, I'm not. I'm just a fuck-up who made a stupid choice, and it cost me everything. My lips quivered, uncontrollable. Dad, I hate that it turned out this way. I wish I could take it all back. It's not fair. Sin doesn't play fair. Unfortunately, it was never in our control. Not really. His head lowered. When I first met the old man, he gave me a second chance, a devil's bargain. The old me would have told him to shove it, but I had just seen some crazy shit. I lost... His eyes lingered on the floor, heavy. That demon kid fucked me up, and I ruined things with your mother in a way that I couldn't ever fix on my own. The old man knew that. There was a silence that held us hostage briefly, almost tangible. He kept himself leaned forward, elbows on his thighs and head weighted. I found myself wanting to speak, but continually tripped mentally, falling into the crevice of my own sorrows. I kept my head low as well, listening to the random bumps and voices that moved around the house without a physical form. He took a breath in through his nose. Kim, I want you to know that I believe in you. A wet burning ignited in the back of my nostrils. Suddenly overcome with emotion and regret, I bit the inside of my cheek. How? I killed you. I killed a teacher, and I almost killed Stacy. I keep fucking up. I tried cramming the emotions back down, but it was different here. I felt raw, exposed. The tears brimmed. I'm not strong enough to fight this, and I can't trust myself around anyone. It'll happen again. He twitched, wanting to reach for me again, but he held back. Sweetie, I don't blame you for what happened. You shouldn't either. As for what came after, it's not necessarily your fault either. That demon was made to manipulate you, to kill. And if you want my opinion on this, I don't think your demon is as bloodthirsty as she wants you to think. I think she's scared. Like you, she's doing what she can to survive. I'm not so sure. She's so full of rage, and all she does is screw with my head. She just wants to kill everyone. He cupped his hands together again, raising his head. It's in her nature. I think you both need to learn to be patient with each other. Otherwise, how can you ever think to take on the old man? I guess. Sin. Putting that into perspective, I don't know how I'm ever gonna face him. I barely survived my first fight with another Tuffle. Even with Alice, I'm worthless. Always have been. My words trickled to sadness at the end, and my head lowered. He placed one hand on my shoulder again and assured me, Don't talk like that. Not my little girl. A skittering set of voices whisked past us in the living room. Words and breathing played at 10 times the speed, there and gone in seconds. I said dreadfully, I think that little girl might be dead. If that's the case, you've already lost, he stated somberly. I looked at him with wet eyes. With that, a quake seized the walls, and everything began to shake around us. We both looked around. Confusion painted my face, and he displayed downhearted acceptance. He took hold of both my shoulders now. The sincerity in his eyes shouted 1,000 words he couldn't properly convey, but I knew. A change in the cast shadows behind him caught my eye. Looking past his head, I saw the light outside the windows rotate around the house. Then a click to my right. I reacted to the sound and watched the front door slowly ease open. The light entered just the same, but it was less intense. He took hold of my chin and pulled me back to his eyes. "Don't pay any attention to that." With his touch on my flesh, I felt a burning singe in the middle of my chin and watched him retract his hand. There was blood on the top of his thumb. That same blood now rolled down my neck. His face tensed, and he gave a frustrated sigh. "I'm sorry." "It's okay," I assured him. "But why? Why does my body react this way?" He grit his teeth, thinking of the best words. "They're triggers," he hurried. "It's all a part of your image of me and this house. If you were to stay here, you would see so much more than shadows. Things you've forgotten or repressed. Things your shadow uses to give your demon control." He answered with caution in his voice. I observed the color of his eyes, noticing a depth much more detailed than the iris itself. "Are you suffering here?" I fearfully asked. He smirked. "Are you still suffering from the things I did to you?" I shook my head no, but averted my eyes to the TV. The blank screen now reflected the two of us, and I nodded. He released me. "I see." When my gaze returned to him, I saw blood trickle from the corner of his lips. He was still smiling as his shirt was very slowly soaked through with blood. He didn't notice at first, but when he saw my staring, he looked down, and his chest deflated with a long exhale. "Damn it," he grunted. "What's going on?" "You've been here too long. Your presence is sapping this place thin." "What do we do?" He quickly but gently reached out and took my hand in his. Holding it sweetly, he fully turned in my direction and smiled. "It's time for you to go." The blood had completely drenched his shirt, and now his nose and eyes began to trickle. I felt a lump in my throat. "What will happen to you?" "Everything will loop, but you can't be here when it does. Don't worry about me." I shook my head again. "I don't want to go. I can't abandon you." My voice strained. His lower lip quivered, suddenly stricken by powerful emotions. "You have to," he reluctantly said. "Kim, check your—" His voice cut off, turning to static. "Dad, no." I lurched forward, and both arms wrapped around him. The rumbling got louder, and the shaking intensified. The front door slapped against the wall over and over, cracking as the light outside of the house began to shrink in the distance, until nothing but a frail glow leaked in through the windows. Feeling the chill of dark, I held him tighter. A deafening ring came to life in my head with the complete silence that befell us so abruptly. The chill had stifled, and the house felt empty. Still shaking, I retracted my body and gawked at his wide-eyed expression. There was no blood to be seen. As I stared into his eyes, I came to grips with the reality of our lives. What he did to steal my mother's affection is unforgivable. Then losing her, trying to protect us. Who he became after that wasn't entirely his fault. Sin had always been there, torturing him, haunting him. Guilt and inner hatred weighed on his soul, and he was powerless to fight it. I could never truly forgive him. That much we both understood. However, I whimpered. "I love you." He held me tight, for the first time since I can remember. This is real, in the only way that mattered. All the pieces, everything we were and will ever be. I heard a metallic ding vibrate my skin. Then I felt a warmness soak into my chest. "I love you, Kim. Thank you."